In 1957, an agency was created with a vision to harness the power of the atom for the benefit of humankind. It works with partners across the globe to help countries use nuclear science and technology to meet development challenges, boosting food supplies, improving health, protecting the environment, and contributing to global peace. This agency provides the technology, expertise, and training to make all this possible. Through nuclear science, it helps countries to develop high-yielding crops that can thrive in extreme conditions, breed healthier livestock, and protect fruit and animals from harmful pests. The work of this agency supports the conservation of our oceans and coastlines, protecting the marine resources that ensure the livelihoods of millions of people. It promotes the use of nuclear technology to fight cancer and improve human health. The organization assists countries with their energy planning. If they choose nuclear power, it offers expertise to ensure facilities are run safely and securely. It provides standards and assistance to ensure the safe use of radioactive materials, guidance on the management of the waste generated by the use of nuclear technologies, and helps nations to prepare for and respond to incidents and emergencies. It's an agency that prevents the spread of nuclear weapons by helping to make sure that nuclear materials remain in peaceful uses. It's the global platform for cooperation in nuclear security, advising countries how to guard against nuclear terrorism and prevent the theft and smuggling of radioactive materials. Providing technology and expertise, promoting safety and security, assisting sustainable development. This is Atoms for Peace and Development. This is the IAEA.
No hunger, good health, clean water, a prosperous life. For decades, the IAEA has been researching and developing nuclear science and technology in its labs, and cooperating with countries to transfer that knowledge and build up regional expertise, bringing peace, health, and prosperity to millions. 4 flagship initiatives launched by the agency's Director General, Rafael Mariano Grossi, are pushing this work further, helping more and more countries provide their people with a prosperous existence. Diseases that can pass from animals to humans like COVID-19, bird flu, and Ebola have not gone away. They affect around 2.6 billion people a year. Zodiac was launched by the IAEA to help countries detect, identify, and contain outbreaks of such zoonotic diseases. About 100 national labs are now trained and 50 are newly equipped to use nuclear techniques. They work together to track diseases and share information.
In the past, we had to send samples to the United States for confirmation of a disease. Now, with the help of IAEA, we are able to detect the diseases in less.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the annual webinar series number 15. So before we proceed with the webinar main proper lecture, let me first share with you a few slides on what is ANEM for your information. So let me share my... So this webinar series is being organized by the Asian Network for Education in Nuclear Technology, or ANEM. So ANEM now has been in existence for 20 years, and it is a regional partnership supported by supported by the IAEA for cooperation in capacity building, human resource development, and knowledge management in nuclear science and technology. So it is supported by the IAEA through the regional projects on nuclear education. And the objective of this network is to assist the member countries in building capacity and developing human and scientific infrastructures through cooperation in education, nuclear knowledge management, and related R&D in nuclear technology in Asia and the Pacific region by utilizing the e-learning platform and advanced information and communication technology, or ICT. Right now, the network has 22 member countries, which are the countries here in Asia and the Pacific region. We also have 9 collaborating member organizations, and the very new 2 partners that we had last 2 years ago were the International Nuclear Science Olympiad and also the International Nuclear Science and Technology Academy. We also have a new member who joined the INEN or the network only last year, which is Saudi Arabia. So what are the benefits of joining INEN? So it has an expanded network. It could connect you with a global network of innovators, scientists, industry leaders, and educators. It also provides you access to resources, gain access to valuable resources of nuclear science and technology, educational materials, that is modules, books. Also provides you with capacity and capability building. So you can be a part of a supportive community where you can build your capacity building, knowledge, and skills through education and training program. So these are some of the events and programs of the events and programs of the ANEN is open to all. And how to become a member? So you can visit us at our website, anentweb.net, and you can register there and become a member. So there is the membership in ANEN could either be an institutional membership or a collaborating membership. And the approval of applications to membership is done by the steering committee. So you can learn more about us in our social platforms. So we are in Facebook, also in Instagram and other social media platforms. So now let me stop sharing. So now, before we proceed, before I call on to our lecturers, may I request or may I invite Ms. Marina Mishar, the section head of Section 2 of the IAEA Technical Cooperation for Asia and the Pacific, to give us a few welcoming remarks. Marina?
Thank you, Elena. Firstly, good morning from Vienna to distinguished colleagues, the experts, steering committee members of ANEN, partners and friends. It is my honor to welcome you today to today's webinar on food authenticity, the first in 2025, organized under the framework of the IAEA Technical Cooperation Project, RAS 0091, supporting nuclear science and technology education at the secondary and tertiary level, together with ANEN. My name is Marina Mishar, Section Head in the TC Division for the Asia and the Pacific region, and also the project manager for this critical initiative, the TC project on nuclear education. And I am delighted to join you as we advance our shared mission of strengthening nuclear education to meet the growing demands of the Asian Pacific region. Firstly, let me extend my deepest gratitude to all of you, the educators, the policymakers, technical experts, and representatives from ANEN, for your commitment to this cause. The IAEA, alongside with ANEN, had long recognized that sustainable development hinges on nurturing a skilled workforce in nuclear science and technology. So we have a few prior TC projects, and through those TC projects, we had laid a strong foundation by engaging secondary school students and teachers, sparking curiosity in nuclear science and technology through innovative curricular and extracurricular activities. And now currently in RAS 0091, this project strength now lies in its integrated structure, secondary education, plus the seed of the curiosity, the tertiary institution cultivate the expertise, and ANEN's collaborative network ensures scalability and resilience. Together, this three-pronged approach create a sustainable ecosystem that not only meets the immediate demands of the workforce, in the industry, research, and so on, but also empowers future generation to harness nuclear science and technology for peace, development, and achievement of the global SDG. Then I would like to take the moment to congratulate ANEN for its exceptional leadership, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the unprecedented challenges, ANEN has brought member states closer through virtual online courses, webinars, and so on. So by uniting experts across the region and providing the platform where the audience can have access directly through experts, top scientists, top experts within the region to discuss cutting-edge research, education strategies, and what is happening right now on the application of nuclear science and technology. So through all of this, ANEN has proven that collaboration knows no boundaries in crisis and also in current time. So again, thank you very much, Elena, and I wish for more webinars to come.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you so much, Marina. So this afternoon, now let us now proceed to the webinar event. So this afternoon, we have two brilliant scientists from the Philippines who will share with us their work on food authenticity and traceability using isotope techniques on aspects of food adulteration and tracing the geographical origin of food products, among others. Our speakers will deliver their presentations for 20 to 30 minutes each, and question and answer will follow after the two speakers have finished their presentations. But I would like to invite for those who have already questions during the presentation, that please write your question on the chat box, or you may also deliver your question or ask your questions directly to the speaker using your microphone later. So now, let us now. Okay. Maru, I will be sharing my own bio note for them. Okay, so for our first speaker, we had Mr. Raymond Sukgang. Mr. Sukgang is a supervising science research specialist and heads the Nuclear Analytical Techniques Application Section of the Department of Science and Technology, PNRI, or DOST PNRI. His work involves analysis of drinking water for gross alpha, beta, and radon activities, as well as for food and other samples for regulatory certification of non-radioactivity elemental analysis using X-ray, fluorescence spectrometry, tritium analysis, and stable isotope radioanalysis. He carries out valuable research in the fields of climate change, food safety, food authenticity, natural products, environmental science, radiation chemistry, nuclear chemistry, and many others. His research outputs on hydrology studies in Boracay Island, a popular tourist destination in the Philippines, as well as the effects of Typhoon Haiyan, has gained traction in terms of policy development in the country. An alumnus of the University of Santo Tomas and the Development Academy of the Philippines, Mr. Sugang is also a recipient of numerous national and local awards and an author of several books on hydrology and isotope analysis, while also producing more than 50 research works and has presented the results in local and international fora. He has been awarded an International Publication Award given by the National Academy of Science and Technology for several years now. And he also has several musical compositions for piano in his name. So without much further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Raymond Sugang to present his presentation this afternoon entitled Complementing Conventional Techniques with Nuclear Analytical and Isotope Techniques in Food Safety and Authenticity Studies. Mr. Sugang, please.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Ellen, and hi and good day to everyone. So as has been said, I am Raymond Sugang, Laboratory Manager of the Nuclear Analytical Techniques Application Section of the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute. Am I going to share my screen, or am I going to, I will be the one to...
Maybe Mario, could you please share the presentation of Raymond? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena. Sure. Please give a moment.
All right. So while waiting for the presentation, so I will now begin to talk. So food authenticity is actually a growing concern in today's global market, where consumers demand not only quality, but also transparency and truth in labeling, ensuring that food products are genuine and not misrepresented, adulterated, or falsely sourced. This is essential for protecting public health, building consumer trust, and supporting ethical producers. In the Philippines, this issue fits close to home, as even our beloved vinegar, our condiment, and other local favorites like Spanish sardines, our ginger ale, or salabat have been found to be compromised by adulteration. And so, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a short discussion titled Complementing Conventional Techniques with Nuclear Analytical Techniques and Isotope Techniques in Food Safety and Authenticity Studies. Next slide, please. So let me first introduce to you our organization. So as has been mentioned, we are from the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute. Next slide, please. And our mandate is to contribute to the improvement of the quality of Filipino life through the highest standards of nuclear research and development, specialized nuclear services, nuclear technology transfer, and of course, the effective and efficient and next slide, please. And my section is the so-called Nuclear Analytical Techniques Applications section. And therefore, we are employing nuclear analytical techniques for various applications. And nuclear analytical techniques are those that are developed based on the utilization of certain properties of the nucleus and associated with the phenomena of ionizing radiation. In other words, we will be using analytical techniques which are based on nuclear science and technology and techniques that use nuclear instrumentation. And they are called NATs. Next slide, please. So what is food authenticity? A very short definition will be ensuring that food is genuine and not misrepresented. So it actually refers to the accurate representation of food products in terms of their identity, their composition, and claims. It ensures that consumers receives what they are paying for and without deception or fraudulent labeling. So the key aspects for this is food can be food fraud can appear in the misdeclaration of the composition, misdeclaration of the origin or where it came from, and misdeclaration of the method of production, as we shall see later. And this is essential, food authenticity for consumer trust, health, and fair trade. So trust, health, and fair trade. Sometimes when we are put at risk when, for example, allergens are not declared in the labels, and food fraud can pose serious health threats in these cases. And this puts the consumers, especially those with food allergies or intolerances, at significant risk. Or they can be misrepresented just using cheaper ingredients, and we are shortchanged from what we are paying for that particular food. And this is, of course, an issue against fair trade, which may cause economic losses to honest producers. Next slide, please. So therefore, the intent of food fraud usually is to deceive for economic gain in food. And for example, adulteration, when you add something to milk, water, in order to dilute it, or substitute, for example, horse meat in beef, and concealment, for example, you don't show the expiry, or there are other allergens not declared in the label, or counterfeiting, like fake brand packaging, and mislabeling. So you're selling farm fish sold in the market as wild catch. The next slide, please. So as I already mentioned, that consumer health risks are there when there is food fraud and economic losses to honest producers, and it will damage to the brand and market trust. And when consumers discover they have been deceived, trust in the brand and sometimes in the broader industry declines. And this reputational damage can take years to rebuild and may lead to long-term customer losses. And of course, the legal and trade implications. Next slide, please. So why use nuclear analytical techniques? Simply because usually they are highly accurate and objective tools. They can detect fraud at a molecular or elemental level, and useful for tracing the origin and compositional integrity, especially the isotope abundance. And sometimes they are non-invasive and sensitive. And most especially, they can add something to the value of the results, such that the results can answer queries usually which cannot be answered by conventional analytical techniques. Next slide, please. So for the nuclear techniques in action, so the most common, of course, is the isotope ratio mass spectrometry, or IRMS. Also for analytical elemental analysis, the neutron activation analysis, which is sometimes referred to as a referee technique for elemental analysis, X-ray fluorescence analysis for countries without INAA like us, so we can just be contented with XRF, and of course radiocarbon dating or an analysis of radioactive isotopes, and in some cases strontium isotope analysis, and this is used for the establishment of the geographical indicators, meaning the origin of the food. Next slide, please. So for organization, I just included this. So isotopes are the same elements with different number of neutrons, like, and therefore, because they have different number of neutrons, naturally they will have differing in number in the masses, because neutrons have mass. Next slide, please. So these are examples of isotopes. Let's skip this. Next slide. And for isotope techniques, for stable isotope, very common is the IRMS, or the isotope ratio mass spectrometry. And for radioactive isotopes, especially in liquid form, so we use the liquid scintillation counter. Next slide, please. So here is a picture of the liquid scintillation spectrometry. Next slide, please. Yes, and so the sample is a sandwich between two photodetectors, and the sample is mixed with a scintillator that would emit flashes of light whenever there is radioactivity. Next slide, please. And for stable isotopes, we have the isotope ratio mass spectrometry or spectrometer. Next slide. And the value is usually the isotope abundance, because it is difficult to give the absolute value. I mean, yes, is so they are given as relative values and expressed in delta values and expressed in units of per mil. Next slide, please. So in the case, for example, of water, so there are so many possibilities that water can exist. So water can exist with a molecular weight of 18 and actually up to 24 if you play around with the isotopes that are in the water. And therefore, this could make it possible, because in the next slide we shall see that next slide, please, that water, the distribution of the different types of water with different isotopic signatures are exist in different parts of the world. So for example, near the coast, water is less negative, the abundance is less negative, while the delta is more negative as you go inland. And next slide, please. So, and because of this differences in the isotopic signature of water from the coast to the inland, so it is possible that we can determine the geographical origin of the sample just by removing the tissue water from the sample and establishing the GI. Next slide, please. So applications of stable isotope measurements in food authenticity testing. Next slide, please. And so there is the so-called C3 and C4 plants. So these are different types of plants with different photosynthetic pathway mechanisms. The one is an evolutionary offshoot of the other. So the C4 is an evolutionary offshoot of the C3 plants. And because of their differences in their photosynthetic pathway, so there are differences in the abundance of carbon-13 in this plant. So for example, the C3 plants are expected to have isotope abundance of carbon or delta carbon of between 9 to 20 or below 20 per mil. Sorry, the site is percent, it should be per mil. And for C4 plants, it is higher than 20 per mil up to 28 per mil. So therefore, making it possible to differentiate the botanical origin of, say, a particular sample. Like when you have a juice and it is claimed to be orange juice, when in fact it is mostly corn isoglucides. So it can be differentiated because orange is a citric plant and corn is a C4 plant. Next slide, please. And whether the produce is organic or inorganic. So we have the isotopes of nitrogen 15. And nitrogen 15 is more enriched in organic products, but for inorganic, there are usually less enriched because what is abundant in inorganic products is the N14 isotope of nitrogen, which reflects the isotopic abundance in fertilizers, inorganic fertilizers, which are produced from the air using Haber process, and therefore they have very minimal N15 but more of N14. Next slide, please. So the first inspiration for our project such as this was a study in my hometown. This is Boracay Island, deemed to be one of the best beaches in the world. So you can see the white sand during rainy season, but during summer there is so much algae in the beach zone, and we wanted to know what fertilizes the algae, and therefore we employed carbon and nitrogen isotopes to determine the source of nutrients in the algae. And in the next slide please, we shall see that it is the organic waste that fertilizes the algae here. And so meaning, but there are corals which are, or algae which are feed by fertilizers, inorganic fertilizers from golf courses in the island. So therefore, we can differentiate between organic and inorganic plants. Next slide, please. So for the Philippine experience in food authenticity, so next slide. Well, you know very well that our major export in European and US countries is the Karajinan. So it is a binder for ice cream, for cakes, for jellies, and it is derived from a seaweed. So that's our major export. But recently, the European Union has delisted our Karajinan as a part of the organic ingredients list, claiming that our seaweeds are being fertilized by inorganic fertilizer. And that's why it was an inspiration to conduct a study to determine, to develop a method that can distinguish the organic from the inorganic Karajinan and the seaweeds. So we have a preliminary results, and I'm going to show you in the next slide. Next slide, please. So we have you have many seaweed planting regions in the country, and one is in Mindanao, Tawi-Tawi region, and another is in the Batangas region in Luzon. So as you can see from this box and whisker plot, these are for the preliminary values, but we have other samples already collected and being processed from Palawan and other sites in the Philippines. So it is differentiable. I mean, those sourced from Tawi-Tawi can be differentiated from those sourced from Batangas in terms of nitrogen 15 abundance. And why is it so? Because in Tawi-Tawi, it is a common practice to use inorganic fertilizer to fertilize their seaweeds. Whereas in Batangas, so there are mixed. A few uses inorganic fertilizer, but some or mostly just use the natural growing without fertilization. And so therefore, the wide disparity in the N15 abundance values. Next slide, please. Now, I mean, it was already long ago, I can say long ago. It has been a problem for our vinegar because vinegar is usually part of every Filipino diet. I mean, our dishes would contain vinegar. It's a favorite condiment, actually. And the problem with vinegar is the active is the acetic acid. And there are glacial acetic acid available in the market or synthetic acetic acid. And this glacial acetic acid are an exact molecular match to the fermentation-derived acetic acid from plants. So therefore, meaning making differentiation using chemical and other techniques difficult. But when we try to carbon date the acetic acid or a radioassay using carbon-14, so pure plant-derived acetic acid has an average of activity of 12 disintegrations per minute per gram carbon or higher, whereas pure fossil-derived synthetic acid, long been buried under the ground, has a carbon-14 activity lower than 2 disintegrations per minute per gram carbon. So that is how I was able to discriminate between natural and synthetic acetic acid in the country. Next slide. And there is an AUAC procedure, which is the permanganate oxidation number. And actually, it is the one that is employed by our FDA before. But we have proven that it has too many shortcomings. And that is the reason why there are so many fake vinegar in the market, which can be deemed to be natural using the PON method. And with the PNRI developed method, we're able to have a more accurate results. And with the application further of stable isotopes of carbon for the authentication of the botanical origin of the sample, so it made the analysis more accurate and more reliable. Next slide, please. Okay, so the principle is simple. So the carbon-14 present in the atmosphere is assimilated by plants. Next slide, please. And of course, this carbon-14 will be reflected in the acetic acid or the vinegar produced. So we sampled several feed sources for the manufacture of acetic acid. So we have cane, and then we have mango, we have pineapple and rice and coconut or tuba, and analyzed for their carbon content carbon content. And here are the results. So we set the limit as 12 for samples which can be deemed as natural. So below that, it's already considered adulterated. Next slide, please. And when we apply that to market samples of the vinegar, so we have seen a lot of vinegar samples which are not plant-derived and are fossil-derived, and some are pure acetic acid. Some is a mixture of natural vinegar and synthetic vinegar. And when we analyze the vinegars according to brands, we were able to say that 7 out of 10 of the vinegar brands in the market are adulterated or fake. Next slide, please. And then there was a problem because after we have tried to detect the presence of synthetic vinegar in the country, so these adulterators have leveled up and they used biogenic ethanol to produce the synthetic vinegar. You know, they oxidize the biogenic ethanol, and that could reflect the origin, the carbon 14, because it is biogenic. So that's why we have to resort to another test, which is the carbon 13. And from the carbon 13, we can divide our vinegar brands into the coconut, somewhere here, and the cane. Cane is C3 is cane. C3 is cane. So this are the green boxes, and C4 are the coconut, and we have some other sources, and these ones are deemed to be the synthetic vinegar. Next slide, please. And also, we are fond of using soy or fish sauce. But the problem is, there is so-called, for example, for the same brand, patis, meaning fish sauce, patis and patis flavor. So patis is different from patis flavor because the one is authentic fish sauce, but the one is just a brine with a flavor. But nobody, I mean, if you are not the careful in looking at the label, so before, so you can mistake one from the other. And but by simple what you call this proximate analysis, we can already detect that the flavor has less protein because they are flavor, so they have less crude protein. And we also made a stable isotope analysis on this, but as of the when I was making my presentation this morning, I cannot retrieve the data. Sorry. Next slide, please. And for during the Fukushima event, so we analyze which rice samples belong to us and which are Japanese rice. And so the Philippine rice are in the same band for C3, and here are the Japanese rice. And then we have the smuggled rice, which is from the Philippines, but showing a different carbon abundance, carbon 13 abundance. Next slide, please. And as a thesis student project, so we try to differentiate between lysine and methionine amino acids, which are plant-derived and which are synthetic. So here are the synthetic amino acids, and here are the natural amino acids in terms of carbon 13 versus carbon 12. Next slide, please. And now we are into the project, which is on the detection of inorganic produce claiming to be organic. And for that, we use XRF analysis for multi-element, and then a process using box and whisker, and we can differentiate the group of organic from the group of inorganic with more elemental contaminants. Next slide, please. And we applied the same using INAA when some of our staff went to Dalat, Vietnam for analysis, and also we're able to differentiate between organic and inorganic. And we also have proof of concept for the seaweeds using stable isotope analysis. And the samples are being analyzed now for carbon, for nitrogen 15 for this, and it will add to this data so that we can fully discriminate between inorganic and fake, between organic and fake organic produce. Next slide, please. And for authentic oils, so we analyze for reference materials of authentic oils for our with our friend in Vietnam, and we have different oils used in food and in the cosmetic industry, and here are their abundances. Next slide, please. And if we analyze for commercial and put it side by side with the reference authentic, so there are oils like, for example, ginger oil, which are deemed to be fake or adulterated. Next slide, please. And for olive oil in Spanish sardines, which are staple Filipino viand, and we love them for their savory flavor and the health benefits of supposed to be the olive oil. Unfortunately, some products were adulterated. I mean, using cheaper oils while still claiming to contain pure olive oil. So those in this box are the ones sardines with olive oil, and the others are those sardines which contains other cheaper oils. Next slide, please. And many of the products contain corn oil, and here is the olive oil, and many sardines actually contain corn oil. Next slide, please. And so this is our ginger ale beverage, also favorite of the Filipinos. And ginger is supposed to be now let me see, because we analyze for market samples of ginger, and we see one that is not consistent with C3 plant. This is excuse me, C4 plant, and therefore, okay, so this is the only C4 plant which contains significant amount of ginger. All the rest are mostly this is the only C3 plant which contains significant amount of ginger. All the rest contain C4 plants, which are sugar cane. So although it is really allowed to put sugar in the ginger, but for samples such as this, where there is so many sugar and there is excessive sugar, and replace the genuine ginger, it will defeat its purpose as a healthier alternative. Next slide, please. And for the cocoa and palm sugar, so as a proof of concept, so we have very consistent with our the Moscovado sugar. So it is C4 plant, but one of the cocoa sugar labeled cocoa sugar displayed the Muscovado, meaning not a coconut derived, but cane sugar derived. So it's a fake palm sugar or cocoa sugar. And next slide. So I think this is the end of my slide. We're also into detection of haram ingredients. So, for example, there are marshmallows which does not contain genetic material, and lard which we analyze using isotope techniques to complement the RT-PCR in order to obtain better authentication of our halal products. So in conclusion, I will say food authenticity is not just a matter of accurate labeling. It is a critical issue that affects consumer health, trust, and the livelihood of honest producers. In Filipino favorites like the suka, the Spanish sardines, the salabat, and everything, adulteration not only deceives buyers, but also undermines the cultural and health values of these products that these products represent. So the use of advanced nuclear techniques provides a scientific and reliable approach to combat food fraud by ensuring that what we consume is genuine. We protect our health, promote fair trade, and preserve the integrity of our beloved Filipino foods. So as consumers, as scientists, and advocates, let us continue to uphold authenticity and demand transparency in every product that reaches our table. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Mon, for that insightful presentation and also for sharing the progress of your team's research work in using these nuclear analytical and isotopic techniques in food safety and authenticity for vinegar, soy sauce, fish sauce, Spanish sardines, and among others. But, you know, we in the Philippines, I think, would be happier if we would know the brands that you have found to have misrepresented the composition of their products so that we could avoid them when we go to the supermarket. But anyway, I'm sure that come sooner, it will, our Food and Drug Authority would be able to implement or adopt this technique in ensuring that what we have, the products in the supermarket or in our groceries, are not misrepresenting the composition of their products. Thank you again, Mon, for that presentation. So as I said earlier, we will defer the question and answer after we complete all presentations. So I would like now to invite our next presenter, Dr. Angel Bautista. Let me share. Okay, so our next presenter for this afternoon is Dr. Angel T. Bautista D7. He is a scientist one and heads the Nuclear Materials Research Section of the Department of Science and Technology, Philippine Nuclear Research Institute. He has a PhD in nuclear engineering and management from the University of Tokyo, Japan, which he obtained in 2016. He has a master's degree in environmental science and an undergrad degree in chemistry from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He has published more than 20 scientific articles on tracing radioactivity and pollution in the environment back to their sources using nuclear isotope-based analytical techniques. For his work related to the Fukushima accident, the government of Japan awarded him Excellent Researcher of the Forum for Nuclear Cooperation in Asia, or FNCA, in 2021. He was the program leader of the Food Authenticity and Traceability Program of the Department of Science and Technology. And for this work, he was the President of the Philippines, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., awarded him the 2023 Outstanding Government Worker Civil Service Commission Pag-asa Award in 2024. Other ongoing research projects or research work of Dr. Bautista are in the field of nuclear fuel cycle research program, investigation of the elevated radioactive iodine-129 in the West Philippine Sea, and the establishment of the National Isotope Center. So without much further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Bautista for his presentation. Angel.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma'am Ellen, for the wonderful introduction. Good day, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you could hear me well and you could see my screen. So Thank you very much, Sir Mon, for the wonderful first talk. So Sir Raymond has given you a good overview of the food authenticity and traceability work we have been doing here. So maybe for my part, I would like to focus on something more specific food. And for this part, I would like to share with you our work on honey authenticity and geographical or bee species traceability using nuclear techniques and machine learning. So again, I'm Angel from the PNRI as well. So okay, so in the Philippines, particularly for our Philippine National Standard, we define honey as the natural sweet substance produced by bees from the nectars or secretions of plants. So it's clear that it should be produced by bees, and it's clear that it should be from the nectar or secretions of plants, and there shouldn't be anything added to it, at least according to our national standards. So there are a lot of health benefits for honey that includes antimicrobial, anti-tumor, antioxidant, anti-diabetic, and wound healing properties. And these health benefits have put a high demand on honey in the market since ancient times. But the same benefits and the same demand has made honey a subject of adulteration and fraud. So what is honey adulteration and fraud? So simply speaking, it can be done, or it is commonly done, by adding or completely substituting honey for inexpensive sugar syrups, commonly from C4 plants, as Sir Raymond has introduced earlier, such as sugarcane and corn. Probably this is being done to lower the production costs and then to increase the profits in the part of the perpetrators. Fortunately, as has been previously shared, using isotopes, particularly the stable isotopes of carbon, we can differentiate C3 from C4 plants. And fortunately, honey, because the bees usually get their nectar from flowering plants, their signature is from C3 plants, while the usual adulterants like sugarcane or corn syrups are C4 plants. So as you can see in this slide, let me just put the pointer. Yeah, the C3, the signature of the carbon 13 of the C3 plants and of original honey maybe ranges about -20 to -34, let's say, while C4 plants, its C13 ranges is about -18 to -10. So completely and statistically separate from each other. And this shows that we can use stable isotopes of carbon to differentiate authentic honey from adulterated or fake honey. So this is actually the principle behind AOAC method 998.12, or the Internal Standard Stable Carbon Isotope Ratio Analysis, or ISKIRA, which states that if a honey sample is authentic, then its delta carbon 13 value of the bulk honey, meaning most of the sugars or just honey as received, should be similar to its protein content, which is probably from the pollen or from the enzymes of bees. They must be similar because they are coming from the same thing if the honey is authentic. So it's carbon 13 of the bulk, and the protein should be similar. So in our institute, when we receive a honey sample, for example, here, we analyze it directly using isotope ratio mass spectrometer. We analyze the carbon 13 content. We call this the bulk delta C13. And then, but we, using the same honey sample, we use some chemical reagents to separate the protein, and we analyze the carbon 13 of the protein only. And then we compare the delta carbon 13 of the bulk honey and its protein content. And according to the ISKIRA method, if the honey is authentic, the difference between the protein and the honey delta carbon 13 should be greater than or equal -1 per mil. So if percent is 1/100, per mil is 1/1000. So that's very small. That's the uncertainty that we're working with. Okay, so graphically, this is easier to spot. So the blue dots here are the delta carbon 13 for the bulk honey, while the orange diamonds are the delta carbon 13 for the protein content. So the different columns are different samples of honey, for example. So if the honey is authentic, we could expect again that the blue and the orange dots would be similar from each other, very close to each other. But if the honey is adulterated, we could expect that the signatures of the bulk and the honey would go farther away from each other. Because if someone is adding sugar syrups from C4 plants, then definitely the protein stays the same, but the bulk honey differs from the signature, and we could spot them easily. So in the Philippines, what we first did, because AOAC method or the Iskira method is an international method, we first wanted to make sure that the method is applicable for honey produced in the Philippines. So we collected various authentic honey samples, samples that we are sure that are authentic honey made by various species of bees from all over our country. And then we all analyzed that using the Iskira method. And true enough, for example, these are the results here. The range of the bulk honey and the honey protein are all in the range where we expect authentic honey would be. So let me just go back to the earlier slide. So we said it's about -20 to -34 if the honey is authentic. So both the bulk and the honey protein of our Philippine samples are within that range. So if the range is even narrower, so that's around -23 to maybe -29. So all within that range. And again, we said that if honey is authentic, then the value of the Iskira index, or the protein minus the bulk honey, should be greater than or equal -1 per mil. And true enough, all samples, authentic samples from the Philippines, are all greater than -1, as you can see in this plot here. So we can say that all of these samples pass the Iskira method, and we could say, at least based on this, that the Iskira method is applicable for honey samples produced in the Philippines. So next, what we did is we collected various honey products that are available in our markets here in the Philippines. We bought them by ourselves, physically by ourselves, and that is, we call it that the store-bought group. That's 57 different brands, some 16 of which are labeled as locally produced, while the rest appears to be imported from various continents, as shown in this graph here. And again, another group is that we bought them online. So 74 different brands we bought through our usual online shopping platforms here in the Philippines. And at least most or all of these samples bought online are labeled as locally produced or produced in the Philippines. So here are the results of those analysis using the Iskira method. So out of the 57 we bought physically from different stores, supermarkets, grocery stores, we found that 12 out of the 57 brands were found to be adulterated with C4 sugars. They were not authentic, completely authentic honey. That's only 21%, so that's a bit of a good news. But if we look more closely, so as I mentioned, the store-bought group was a mix of local and imported products. So 0 out of the 41 imported honey we found in our markets here were adulterated. All were found to be free of C4 sugar. So that's good news, at least for the imported side. But the bad news for us is that 12 out of the 16 local brands, or 75%, was found to be adulterated. So all 12 of the 57 were in the group of the locally produced honey. The story is worse for the online bought group. Again, we have 74 different brands that were all labeled locally produced. 64 out of those 74 brands, or 86.5%, were found to be adulterated with C4 sugar. So yeah, so we, based on this result, we found out that our local honey brands, about maybe about 4 out of 5, or about 80%, is actually adulterated or fake. Using this method, we could even see how much adulteration is in the honey samples, and you could see that out of the 76 adulterated brands, about 62, or about 80%, contained more than 95% sugar syrup. So it's not even adulterated. It appears they just completely substituted sugar syrup for honey. So there's no trace of honey in those samples. They're completely sugar syrup, C4 sugar syrups. So there's 2 samples that appears to be about 50-50. So 50% authentic honey, a mix of 50% authentic honey and 50% sugar syrup. But again, all of those inauthentic brands were found to be just completely sugar syrups. So that's how bad the situation is. So what's the effect of this finding to our local honey industry? So if we imagine that you are a beekeeper in the Philippines, you find out that 4 out of 5 of the local brands that you are competing with the local market is actually fake. It's actually adulterated, and that what's worse is that this fake honey or adulterated honey can be sold for very, very cheaply For example, it can be sold as cheap as 1/3 or 1/4 of the price of the authentic honey. Just for example, authentic honey could be sold for 1,000 pesos per kilogram. The adulterated or fake honey can be sold to about 150 or 200 pesos per kilogram. So imagine that 4 out of 5 of your competitors are fake and they're selling so low. So they're selling so cheaply. So our honest beekeepers, our authentic keepers are forced to lower their prices, and that's putting really undue pressure to their businesses. So just for a quick estimate, I think that we think the country is losing hundreds of millions of pesos per year to this problem of honey adulteration and honey fraud. That's the economic side of it. On the part of the consumers, so again, we have the producer side, but we also have the consumer side. So for people buying honey for the health benefits, for the good health benefits. So instead of buying and paying for authentic honey, which is full of health and therapeutic benefits, many consumers are actually being tricked into paying for pure sugar syrups that are devoid of this positive health benefit. So in the worst of cases, this problem can pose harmful effects to the public, to the consumers. For example, high fructose corn syrup, a known adulterant of honey, causes an increase in intestinal tumors. So for example, you're buying honey for its anti-tumor properties, but unknowingly you're buying high fructose corn syrup instead. So instead of controlling your tumor, you're actually enhancing your tumor. Another common example, many people are buying honey for its anti-diabetic properties, but if they're actually paying for or they're actually mistakenly buying pure sugar syrups, then they're making their diabetes worse in this case. So it can lead to harmful health effects. So that's on the side of the consumers. So what we did is that at first, when we did this work, the Iskira method was not part of the Philippine national standard, or at least it was not recognized as an official method to detect honey authenticity. But we talked with our Department of Agriculture. We proposed that to include this very important method. It's actually the gold standard for honey authenticity in the world, and we wanted to propose to include this in our Philippine national standards. And true enough, after several national technical working group meetings and stakeholder consultations on September 2022, officially the Iskira method was included in the Philippine national standards for honey. So it's now recognized as an official method to test for honey authenticity, at least here in our country. So that's a good step forward towards this problem, towards solving this problem. Again, as mentioned by Ma'am Ellen, for this work, for our testing and for proposing this new standard, we were fortunately awarded by the President of the Philippines the Civil Service Commission Award. This was in the award is 2023, but it was conferred to us in early last year. So we're very proud and happy about that. So what's the way forward? What's next? So let me give you a preview, last few slides maybe, of what we're working at currently. So before we were able to put the Iskira method into the market, the gold standard in the Philippines was sugar profile testing, probably HPLC. So you test the amount of sucrose, glucose, and fructose to see if your honey is authentic. But this sugar profile testing is easy to fool, because if the one doing the adulteration or the faking is good, they can mix the right amount of sucrose, glucose, and fructose to fool this sugar profile testing. So that's much harder to do in the case of Iskira method, because again, we're saying that these are signatures, these are fingerprints in nature, and that's much more harder to recreate. So the amount we estimate the testing amount to be competitive. They're both around 8,000 pesos, but the technology wise, we say that the Iskira method is more foolproof. But after that, we wanted to even improve it further. So Iskira method, it takes several weeks, and you have to bring it back to the lab. And again, it's about 8,000 pesos. that's quite high for some businesses, for some people if they want to test their honey. So we're trying to improve this further. We developed a handheld method using a handheld XRF. So we just, for example, you're in the market, you have this cups, you pour the honey into this cup, you fire it into this, for example, this is the handheld XRF, and then we were able to develop a method based on still we had samples that were sure they're authentic because of the Iskira method and sure that they were fake, and we all analyzed them using this handheld method, and we with the addition of the machine learning, the AI, we were able to create a method that could say using this handheld method if the honey was authentic or not. At least it's not as good, of course, as the Iskira method, but we designed the model such that if it passes this handheld test, we are sure that it is authentic. If it fails, it's suspect. So if it fails, we need to confirm it using the Iskira method. So that's the compromise. So it can be used as a pre-screening tool. So once it passes, you're sure it's authentic. But if it fails this handheld method, you have to confirm using the Iskira method. So at least that's a very good progress towards it. You could bring this to the market. You could bring this wherever. You could analyze. And I have a comparison here. Yeah. So the Iskira method, the accuracy, of course, is unmatched. It is the gold standard. Yeah. So it is the gold standard. The handheld method, of course, it's only for pre-screening, but the cost there's a big difference. The Iskira method is 8,000 pesos per analysis. We estimate the handheld method to only be just about 1,500 pesos per analysis. And another thing that's the trade-off is that the analysis time for the Iskira method is 2 weeks minimum because it's per batch, while the analysis time for the handheld method is only 5 minutes maximum. So that's a good trade-off. We could use handheld method for pre-screening, and we could use Iskira for verification. So that's what we're designing right now. Not just authenticity, just to share with you other types of work. We could even use this handheld method to say what kind of bee species produced our honey. So for example, in the Philippines, the most common bee species used to create honey are Apis mellifera, that's the European honeybees. We have Apis dorsata or Apis breviligura, those are giant Philippine honeybees. And lastly, we have Tetragonula biroi, those are stingless bees. And using this method and artificial intelligence or machine learning, we could tell with about 85.2% what bee species created your honey. This is very important because stingless bee honey is being pushed, at least here in the Philippines, but I think also in other countries, to be the next superfood. It's the next miracle liquid. They found that the health benefits of stingless bee honey is exceptionally high compared to other honeys, even as high or at par with Manuka honey of the world famous Manuka honey of New Zealand. So there's a great potential in stingless bee honey. It's currently being pushed as the next superfood in the industry. Okay, next. Okay, not just bee species, we could even tell you using this technique where the honey was produced. So in the Philippines, we are divided into several regions. For example, 1, 2, 3, region 1, region 2, region 3, 4, A4, B5, CAR region, NCR region. So we can tell right now with 84% accuracy which region in the Philippines the honey was made, where in the Philippines the honey was made in. So you can imagine the possibilities. So, and lastly, we are creating a smartphone app to put in all these AI models that we created. So it's more accessible and friendly to use for everyone, particularly all the stakeholders. Just to share with you, this work is part of a bigger research program. We call it Food Authenticity and Traceability Using Isotope Techniques Program, or we fondly call it FAT program, Food Authenticity and Traceability. It's composed of 4 projects. So project 1 is led by Sir Raymond, which is with spoke before me. And then project 2 is on honey, led by me. And then there are 2 more projects, and I would like to share with you quickly their findings as well. So the 3rd project is on mango. So Philippines is one of the famous products of the Philippines is the mango. Particularly our first geographical indication product type of intellectual property like trademark, but it assigns premium to the product based on where it was made. So like Champagne of France, for example. But in the Philippines, our first geographical indication is the Guimaras mango. So using this technique, we were able to create as well models based on XRF, IRMS, and machine learning that could classify with 100% accuracy, give us a mango, we can tell you if it came from Guimaras or it did not come from Guimaras. So we could also use that. We also, in the Philippines, we also have a lot of internationally award-winning coffee and chocolates. And using, again, this technique, we could tell you which region in the Philippines the coffee was made in, 84% accuracy. We could even tell you with a 99% accuracy what type of coffee that is. Is it Arabica? Is it Robusta? So again, we were doing this with the help of many. We can't do this alone. We're just the research agency, but we're implementing this research project with our industry partners, and of course our government agencies, regulatory agencies. So my final message is that it needs the teamwork of all of these sectors: regulatory, the industry, the consumer, and the general public, us research in the academe, and national standards. So collaboration from all sectors anchored in sound nuclear science and research would lead, and we truly believe that would lead to stable and sustainable solutions. So yeah, so just a quick conclusions. I won't read them anymore, but we've shared a lot with you. So hopefully, yeah, you learn a lot, and we'd like to entertain your questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc Angel, for that equally insightful presentation on your work, on your team's work on determining the authenticity of honey in the Philippines using isotopic techniques. So it kind of saddens me when I was listening to your presentation earlier, because we have almost 100%, not 100%, of the honey in the supermarket, in our groceries, adulterated, meaning.
Yeah.
So we have to go now, meaning we have to buy the imported honey just to make sure that we get the correct honey, right? So, but anyway, I don't want to take much time for the Q&A. So I'm now opening the floor for question and answer. You may raise your hands. I didn't see any question on the chat box. So Mr. Sukang and Doc Angel and Doc Bautista are still here, and they would welcome your questions. Or if you'd like to, or maybe comments on the presentations that they have just done. Any questions from the audience? Okay, so maybe what I could do while waiting for the questions, I just like to read some of those who are the messages in the chat box. So we have one from Vincent Jans, who wrote that it would be lovely if the presentation slides will be emailed to us soon after the webinar session is over. The recording of this webinar will be uploaded into the ANET website. So if you would like to listen again to the presentations, please go to our website, anetweb.net, and then you can again view or watch the presentation. And also, there are some people from thanking both of you, Dr. Angel and Sir Raymond, for the presentations. And Mr. Stewart Walker thanked Raymond, and he said that good to hear how you are progressing on your work, Raymond. And then also Muhammad Shakawat Hussein also said, thank you, Dr. Raymond, for your presentation. And okay, so there's somebody who raised their hand. Who's that? I think he lowered his hand again. So I will continue with reading the. Okay, there's a question for Dr. Angel from Stewart Walker. In some countries, the bees need to be fed during winter, and this is done with standard sugars. So the initial honey produced will have sugar signal. Dr.
Okay,
Angel.
thank you for the question. Yes, this practice is also being done in the Philippines, but um, the practice that you need to feed the bees only during the non-flowering season, the off season, for them to survive. So it is an accepted practice, but it is clear in our standards that the honey produced by the bees during that sugar feeding should not be sold as honey because technically it's not defined as honey. So if we're gonna be strict, then it's not. It shouldn't be honey. And yes, the question is because using Iskira method, we are able to detect if the product or if the honey was created using sugar feeding. So if it was still made by bees, but if you're just feeding your bees with sugar syrup, then yes, it will fail the Iskira method.
Thank you, Dr. Angel. And there's another question here for you, Dr. Angel, from Alwilad Bello. Would you be considering to evaluate the honey here in Region 10, or have you done it already?
Yes, po. So we have we are we it are we are currently processing the data. We are working with PTSO Bukidnon. So we have visited Region 10, I think once or twice already, and we have collected samples there. So we'll be happy to share the results soon. So we're just processing the data.
Okay, so there's a student here named Amir. So he's asking for the PDF. So would you share your presentation files, Dr. Angel and Sir Raymond?
I think it's okay. We'll remove some data because some of it is unpublished, or we're still in the process of patenting some, but most of it we could share.
Okay. So you have to send us a new version of your presentation, Dr. Angel, that we could share. Okay. And how about you, Sir Raymond?
Yes po, we can share.
Okay, so for those who are interested to get the PDF, the presentation files from our speakers, you have to get it in the ANANC website. So you have to go to our ANANC website. We upload it there together with the recording of the webinar. So, okay. So I think can I ask again, any questions? Are there more questions from our audience? So I think I mute this only message. Okay, this is a question for you, Dr. Angel. What are the current efforts being made to help consumers become aware of buying adulterated honey in the market?
Okay, so we are continuously publicizing the results of our studies. That is in the form of in the social media as well as in several news stations, but not just but we also of course pushing towards academic route as well. We're publishing it, we're patenting it. Although the usual question we're getting is that can we release the brand, the name of the brand that are authentic and that are fake, and this is the usual dilemma that we have because we are a research institution. um, um, Personally, I'm not sure if we have the legal capability to for example, we release the brands and then the companies sue us if we can fight that battle. But technically, we don't have the mandate and the authority to regulate this product. So what we do, we collect all the information, all the brands, all the which ones are authentic, at least how we are based on our study. We give them to the agencies that have the mandate, for example, our Food and Drug Administration, the Department of Agriculture. We give all the information to them. We really inform them what is happening. And yeah, anyone who has ask us we tell them the information is with the regulatory agencies, and we forward this queries to them. Yep.
Thank you for that answer. So, okay, so there are more messages in the chat box. So, can we invite Dr. Angel from engagement with student researchers? Yes, of course. Okay, Dr. Angel, you would like to answer?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
But can I clarify where this is? Is this
Can
in the
I,
Philippines
would
or?
you-
or abroad?
the question came from Ace Cardeno. Ace Cardeno, are you from the Philippines? Maybe. Yes, I think he is. So you could just if you're interested on the study on any of Doc Angel's and also Sir Raymond, you can come to PNRI, or you can also call us or also visit our website. And the PNRI accepts, we provide also on the job trainings here in our institute. We also our facilities also are open for students for the research work. So you could always really engage with us, with our researchers here, with Sir Raymond or with Dr. Angel and other research or scientists we have here in the institute. So okay, so he is from Bukidnon. So he's from Bukidnon. Yes, of course. So you can just get in touch with us. You can visit our website, and we have our contact information there. And then you can call us or email us. Can I ask a question for Sir Raymond? Mon? May I know now the progress? I'm not sure if it was part of your presentation. Maybe I did not get it. Any progress on the checking? The method that you are using, that you use for the vinegar authenticity. Is it already being adopted as a method by FDA?
It is not made as a standard, but for already more than at least 3 years, it is being offered as a service by PNRI and vinegar industries. The voluntarily have their samples tested, and we are happy that there was already a change in the number of brands with adulterated samples. And remember when at the time when there was this debacle in this vinegar issue,
Yes. Yeah,
so the FDA was at least forced to act on the matter, and some vinegar companies were fortunately closed because they were also found to be adulterated by FDA. But of course, we know that there are still so many companies continue doing their adulteration, but at least with the voluntary submission of major brands. So the test is being utilized and being it is useful in the ensuring the quality of our vinegar in the country.
Thank you, Mon. Thank you, Sir Mon. I think, I would also like to inform the body that this research work or this service is also available as a service in PNRI. So the section of Sermon, Mr. Raymond Sukdan, they offer this service, so you can bring the vinegar that you bought from the market if you would like to know if they are, adulterated or not. Then you can have it tested here in PNRI. So, may I announce? I think so. There are no more. I think I don't see any raised hands or any more chat or messages in the chat box. So, may I request now, Xiao Jing? You're still here, right? The vice chair of the Steering Committee of ANAN Steering Committee. Xiaojing. Oh. Xiaojing, are you here? Okay, anyway, I would like to I would like to invite Xiaojing, our vice chair person, to give us some closing remarks before we end the webinar. But if you are not here,
Elena, I think she's not here.
she's not here. But yeah, I saw her earlier.
She was here earlier.
Well, she was here, so maybe she left already. So okay, so I also our chair, Professor Fong Feit of Chulalongkorn of Thailand, is not also here. So I would like to. So now I will do the conclusion. So I'd like to thank, of course, first of all, I would like to thank everyone who came, who joined us for this the 15th webinar of the ANAN, and this is the first for 2025. And also thank you so much for our two excellent speakers, Mr. Raymond Sopang and Dr. Angel Bautista, for sharing their knowledge and the progress of their work in using nuclear and isotopic techniques in checking the authenticity of food products. So again, we hope to see you next time. We don't have a flyer for the next webinar, but the topic of our topic for the next webinar, so we don't have a flyer yet, but we will be issuing or posting it on our website. So we hope that we will see you again next month for the next webinar of the ANAN. Thank you and good afternoon, good morning maybe to still in Vienna, and good noon to the other parts of the world who are present here. Thank you and goodbye. See you again next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.